Good morning, Year 10. This is Mrs. Slaney again here, sitting in my conservatory, so you might be able to hear the lovely birds singing. Thankfully, it's not as scorching as it was yesterday, so I'm able to do this comfortably. So I'm going to go through the answers with you for this week, 22nd to the 26th, so it's due in today. Again, I know some of you have been struggling to manage your time between all your different subjects, and also some of you are going into school now. So even if you do watch the video and manage to fill in some of the tasks, you can still submit them. If you only manage to get one task done, that's still better than nothing. And also if you're not managing to get anything done because you can't access Show My Homework, you'd rather do it by email, you need a paper copy, just get in touch. Even if you haven't done anything and you just want to get in touch and possibly say why you haven't done that, that's absolutely fine. I don't want you to feel any pressure. And also if you're concerned about catching up when we get back, we've already got a plan in place as a school, so please don't worry about that. Also, if you haven't done anything up to this point and you want to just start off, you don't have to catch up all the work you've missed. You can just join in from where you're at, because each of the tasks are separate. So yeah, it'd be lovely to hear from you. Thank you for those of you that have sent me your work. Obviously I haven't met you yet, so that's the only interaction that I can have with you. I have emailed a few parents and got a few emails back, which is great. And I will be doing some further phone calls today just to try and get hold of you, even if it's just to introduce myself. So please don't be concerned about the phone calls. It won't be me trying to pull you over the coals or anything, etc. So what we're going to look at today in terms of literacy tasks is looking at nouns and looking at making them plural. So nouns is a naming word. So for example, apple, more than one would be apples. However, there are exceptions to the rule which we'll go through. So nouns ending in an S, such as these, you add ES to make it a plural. Nouns ending in a Y, you add IES, such as these here. Nouns ending in a Y and the letter before the Y is a vowel, you'll add an S. Nouns ending with an F or FE is normally changed to VE. So this is one that does come up more than other plural spelling issues, is that people will add an S after the F, which you can't do. So here are some examples for you. And then nouns ending in O, add ES to make it plural, which you can see here. Exceptions that don't change at all. So sheep, what is one sheep or more than one sheep? It's a species, a deer, and then irregular nouns, which you will see here. So these are the ones that don't fit any of the above rules. So we've just got some examples below for you to have a go through. If you've filled them in prior, then you can tick them off if you've got them correct or edit them. If you haven't, you could fill them in while we go along, or just fill in the ones that you know that you would have mistaken. So bananas, leaves, obviously fits the rule. If it's an F, it turns to a V and then you add ES. Trolleys ends in a Y. The letter before it is an E, so we add it to IES. Lorry is the singular of lorries. Sheep is an exception that doesn't change at all. Babies changes to IES. Knife, again with the VES. Sausages, you just add an S. Monkeys, you add an S. Irregular noun, so child turns into children. Match into matches. Poppy ends in a Y and it changes to IES. Then, if a word ends in CH, X, SH, S, SS, add ES rather than just an S to make a plural. So one sweet, three sweets, one bush, lots of bushes, here you can see, one kettle, lots of kettles, one dress, two dresses, one box, a pile of boxes with ES, one match, a box of matches, ES. So hopefully you've managed to go through them and tick quite a few off. Even better, rather than just ticking them all off, if there were any that you did get incorrect there, that would be a great way to go, oh right, that's why I've been getting that spelling incorrect, and then be able to learn it for future so it doesn't keep coming up. One kiss, many kisses, one bus, several buses. So there, just be careful that you don't put a double S in there because it's just bus, ES. One glass, two glasses, a pile of sandwiches, and then write the plural for the words below. So footballs, crosses, glasses, chairs, tables, deer is the same, not deers. telephones and fish. So hopefully you've got loads of ticks in there. The next thing we're going to look at is a reading task and the question. So again, make sure you read the little bit of context at the top, then we'll go through, we can check off your comprehension questions and then have a look at a question, an 8-mark question. These questions that I have been getting back, well done to the students that have managed to get the feedback and work on that and remove words such as it's, then it says, then the writer says, and you've been able to embed them. So what I mean by that is when I show you, I'll go through my answer, is being able to put your quote actually in the sentence. So this not only saves you time, but it's a skill that it's a higher skill than just putting a quite big chunk of text in there and then moving on. But again, I'll show that when we get to it. So the next lines are taken from Cleopatra's Sister by Penelope Lively. In this section, the writer describes a child called Lucy, whose mother is called Maureen. Lucy's father is called Brian. Her father is not a very dedicated father. So, Lucy's relationship with her father Brian was to last for a few years only. She remembered him as a friendly figure who took her once to a fun fair and bought her some candy floss. The memory seems appropriately shabby. Her father was fixed in her memory as that jaunty figure who combined selfishness with a desire to make up for his failings. When Lucy was 5, Maureen had 2 small children to cope with, a third on the way, and a husband who had embarked on the process of gently easing himself out of their lives. Lucy was not aware of what was going on because Brian made an effort now and again. He was away a great deal. It was his work, of course. Maureen was never very clear with Lucy about what it was that Brian was involved in at any particular moment. He would be away for a week and then turn up with presents for the children. Then he'd be gone again. With a hug and a wave. It became just a series of phone calls. By the time Lucy was 6, the weeks of absence had extended to fortnights and to months. Her father failed to show up for birthdays and then for Christmas. The phone calls became more infrequent and then tailed off into erratic postcards from places like Scunthorpe or Rhyl. So, we're going to quickly go through the answers here. So list 2 things Lucy remembers her father doing with her or for her. So I've put down, he took her to a fun fair, which is here, and he bought her candy floss. That will get you the 2 marks. I did this one wrong and I've just checked it as I've gone back through, so that's why it's important to check your answers. By the time she was 5, how many siblings did Lucy have? So when Lucy was 5, Maureen had 2 small children to cope with, so that includes Lucy, so I've put 1 there. I've put 2 to begin with. But she's actually pregnant, so Maureen's got 2 kids, so Lucy would be one of them, and she's pregnant, which doesn't count yet. What does Maureen tell Lucy about her father's absences? So it actually says here, she just says that he was away a lot and he was away because of his work, which you can see there. What do the words failed to show up suggest about the father? So it suggests that he's an apathetic father. So he's not totally committed or dedicated to the role of being a father. And also that he failed to show up shows that he's always absent. Then, words in context, find the words infrequent and erratic, look them up, so you can just do this on Google, tap them in your phone. What do they mean? What words could you replace them with? So if you tap in Google, or if you look them up, whichever way you want to do it, modern or traditional, if you look up infrequent, it means not occurring often and rare. Also, if you want to find another word which means the same as infrequent, you just type in whichever word it is, so infrequent synonyms, or if you look up the thesaurus, I don't know why I couldn't say that then, it will give you other words that mean the same. So other words that mean infrequent are uncommon or unusual. So erratic means not in a regular pattern or unpredictable. So another word you could have used here would be inconsistent. So the question we're going to look at is, how does the writer show the relationship between Lucy and her father Brian? So we've done this previously in our old exam board, and one of the things that kids did in the exam was they started mentioning Maureen. So it's not about Maureen and Brian's relationship at all, so you wouldn't be given marks for that. So make sure that you just ignore Maureen. So I've gone through, it's a how question, so you know that we're going to be looking at language, focusing on the relationship, and it's between Lucy and her father. So it's 8 marks, so you must refer to the language used in the text to support your answer, using relevant terminology where appropriate. So I've gone back through here and I'll go through my notes that I've made. If it was an 8 mark question, I'd say you'd be looking for about a couple from the beginning, couple from the middle, couple from the end, to ensure that you got full coverage. So don't just choose something from the middle, for example, and miss out either. If, however, there was nothing in the first paragraph, don't feel like you've got to delve around and try and force something. It's just if there is something there, then I would include it. So here I've put, she remembers him as a friendly figure. So she has got a quite positive memory of her father here. It's not as if she remembers him being awful to her. But he is described as a figure, and he's described as a figure twice, so here and here. Sorry, I'm doing this while holding my phone. So what I've put here is that if somebody's remembered as a figure, she doesn't properly remember him. It could imply that maybe he was there so little that she didn't get a proper relationship with him. But I've put at the second time it's mentioned, it's almost like it's fictional, like he wasn't a real person. You could also be that it's because he played such a small role. The memory that she does have of him is quite shabby, so I've put possibly it's because it's not returned to, or the memory wasn't loved. So it's not as if she's remembering this thing every week or every other day. And so it's quite clear in her memory, the fact that maybe it's not that important to her, that she doesn't keep holding on to this memory and replaying it. Also, I've underlined that she says, he's a jaunty figure who combines selfishness with a desire to make up for his failings. So he's selfish, but he does want to do something about it, but not enough to actually motivate himself there, or possibly inconvenience himself. So here you could put that he is aware, but not motivated. It's not important enough for him to do something about it. Then when Lucy was 5, he began the process of gently easing himself out of their lives. So here I've put that he's possibly sly or sneaky. And also the idea that here it's described as a process. It's a conscious decision. He's not being pushed out of the family life. He's just decided that that's not something that he wants to be involved in anymore. But the idea that he doesn't just come out and say it, that he goes through this process of just not really being there a lot. And then the idea that he made an effort now and again, so he's completely inconsistent. This might also be out of guilt, so once in a while he thinks maybe he has to just throw a present their way. But then he was away a lot because of work, so I think we can infer here that Maureen was trying to protect her daughter's feelings and was possibly lying for Brian, and that wasn't why that he was away. Then when he would come back from being away, he would buy the kids presents for the kids. So I've put here, like, maybe he thought he could buy their affection, or he could just buy them things and that would fulfill the role of being a father or being a parent. And I've put here lazy. By the time she was 6, the weeks of absence had extended, and then her father failed to show up for birthdays. So birthdays being quite an important factor, especially in a young child's life. The fact that he failed to show up, we've said, shows that he wasn't very committed. And then it become, and I've put here, irresponsible, possibly selfish. So he had other priorities, showed that Lucy wasn't the top of his priorities. And then the fact that it tailed off into erratic postcards. It's getting more and more distant. So he used to be there in person, and now he just sends postcards in his absence. So in doing mine, I've put the keywords that I've underlined here, that's how I've started my question, and this is how I would recommend that you start all these types of questions, because it gives you a way into the question. It just makes it a bit easier, because the hardest thing that I've found is just actually getting started. So firstly, I would start with, because it shows that you're tracking the text, that just means working from the start to the end. Firstly, Lucy's relationship with her father. So as an examiner, you've got the keyword here, and the keyword here. So you know that this answer is going to focus on what you've asked them to focus on. Seems unimportant to him. So there you've got what you've inferred the relationship seems like. So how does it show? It seems unimportant to him as it lasted for a few years only, by choice. So there, like I've been saying to students when I'm giving feedback, a small quote, and that's embedded in the sentence. So you haven't had to put this says, when it says. She remembers him positively as a friendly figure. And there, I copied the quote down incorrectly, so I just crossed it out. I put the second quote in rather than the first time figures mentioned. However, the repeated noun figure makes him appear almost fictional and unremarkable, which is important in their relationship. Brian is fixed in her memory, so he is there, but as being selfish and having a desire to make up for his failings. Their relationship becomes more distant. So here it shows that you are tracking how the relationship's shown throughout the text, so it does become more distant. And you've got the keyword again, relationship. Their relationship became more distant when Brian began the process of easing himself out of their lives and only being fatherly now and again. So here, by dropping all these quotes in, you'll be getting marks for them, but you don't have to say something about every single quote, which I'm sure you know. In an attempt at nurturing their strained relationship, so again, this is an inference, shows that the relationship between them is strained, he would turn up with presents, showing he possibly thought he could buy her love, and then you could put, shows a lack of understanding of Lucy. So there is more. I'd got massive writing, so it doesn't actually reach the end. There's a few more that I would have liked to comment on here, about the fact that he wouldn't show up for birthdays, and then the erratic postcards. That would be how I'd finish off. So that's that section. So hopefully yours will look something like that. Again, if you just want to annotate yours by following my annotations, that's absolutely fine. Also, you could add to them, so you might have inferred something else from the language that I've identified, or picked up on another part that you thought was important. You can add that as well. Then the final bit, which I'm really looking forward to reading of yours, is a narrative task. So write a story with the title The Surprise, and it's just the opening paragraph. So the opening paragraph, I know you've been doing narrative in school, some of you that have been in. If you haven't, that's what they've been working on. If you have missed any sessions, then the narrative sessions that are delivered in school are on the school website, so you can have a look at them on there so you can see what's been happening. You can also read all the resources. Again, if any of you want any feedback on the sessions that are being delivered in school, you can email your teacher and they'll give you some feedback. You can upload it and show my homework. Or you can send it to me and I'll might rewrite some sections, give you a literacy mark, give some feedback on it. But hopefully I'll get some of these as well. Obviously, if your story fits from your session in English, you could just write that onto here, saving you writing another one, and then you can just submit that. So when it comes here, it says, try to hook the reader in and be original. Don't use a film plot. So this is a really big one. Don't just try and rip off a film, because examiners like to read something that is your work, that's written completely. So I'm not saying it has to be something that's never been done before, because I think that'll be quite difficult. So you could use the concept from a film, but don't rewrite a film line for line or rewrite an entire scene from a film. When you're trying to hook the reader in, there are certain ways that you don't want to start your narrative. So you don't want to start with your alarm going off. You don't then want a paragraph about how you ate Cheerios, you got dressed. The examiner will be able to assume that these are things that you do, but they're not the most exciting things that you do. So I've put one here that starts in the middle of the action, which I would say is a really good way to start, because immediately it creates questions for the reader. They don't know what's happening, they don't know where you are. They question the characters in there. So barred ways of starting are going to be waking up in bed, eating your breakfast, getting dressed, walking into school. Try and think of more original ways to start. One way to do this often is, if you plan out your narrative, is to actually start with the second paragraph that you've planned out and then edit it from there. So I'll go through mine. I just wrote this at home, the same as you, and it is only my first edit, so this might be that you send yours in and then I'll give you some feedback rather than editing each one. So, branches claw at my face, brambles tear at my legs and arms, while the relentless scream continues. It's my voice. So straight away, if we're hooking the reader, you've got much better, rather than starting with I, you've got branches claw at my face. So straight away, you've set the tone here with the verb claw. Brambles tear at my legs and arms, while the relentless scream continues. So immediately, who's screaming? Why is this person running? What are they running from? Who is this person? You've got lots of questions there. And then you've got the realisation that this horrible scream, relentless rather than just a scream, so this never ending, sorry, it's hard to do like this, never ending scream is the narrator's voice. Hurling myself at the open space, the barbed wire grasps at me, dragging at my clothes, and I'm stuck fast. So again, not starting with the I, so starting with the verbs. Checking, of course, that when you're starting with subordinate clauses that you've got your commas in the correct places. I unzip my jacket, and rip out my arms. So all the verb choices here are all linked to the speed in which the narrator's trying to do something. Leaving it there, I crawl forward through the brush. Also, remember to check tense, which came up in the examiner's report. If you make sure you're staying in one tense, so don't start in present tense and then change to past, for example. I would say that I personally find it easier to write in past tense, but again, it's totally up to you, whichever your writing style's at. Sticky blood covers my face, blurs my vision. So there, I've got a comma splice. So that's why you need to check it. Comma splice is when I've put a comma in instead of a connective, so it should say sticky blood covers my face and blurs my vision as I see, this is where you proofread. I scramble forward. I jump the fence and sink down knee deep into what feels like slimy, heavy liquid. Pulling my leg up, I see nothing. So here you can see just a continuation of what's happened, but here's the mystery bit added in. So this would be the bit of the surprise which links back to the title. So just make sure when you're writing this that there is something surprising in there. So the character's jumped into something, I guess mine's a little bit sci-fi, gone to look down, he or she's realised that it feels like they're stood in something, looking at their legs, there's nothing there. But I'm being drawn down. The ground is falling away and it will soon close over me. I can't fight what I can't see. So then obviously that would link in quite well to the introduction of the problem, which would be paragraph 2. So this one is a lot more interesting, like we said, than your alarm going off, waking up, etc. So try and start off if you can with something actually happening. And what I would say in terms of vocab, which we're going to focus on a lot when we are back in school, aiming towards the higher bands, is don't just think when we're talking about vocabulary that you need to just put empty adjectives in there. So you wouldn't need like, I don't know, large branches clawed at my face. Think about changing instead the verbs and the adverbs that you use, and also linking it to the sentence structures that you've used, which we've looked at previously. So starting with your verbs, starting with your adverbs. So if anyone has any more questions on that, then feel free to drop me an email or talk to me on Show My Homework. But if not, I'll just look forward to seeing your stories. Thanks a lot.